webinar that's hosted and organized by le ministère de l'économie et de l'innovation du Québec, as well as l'Institut Transmedtech, a living lab based in Montreal. So thank you again all for being here. We have a great turnout, so we're very excited. About 160 people have registered for the event, and I'm letting everyone in as we speak. Before we start, or actually to start, we're delighted, we're very happy to have with us the Quebec chief scientist, who's going to say a few words, a few opening remarks. So we're delighted to have Dr. Rémi Quirion with us, who's, as I mentioned, the chief scientist for Quebec, and for our American audience, the chief scientific office advisor in Quebec, basically works and advises the Ministry of Innovation, of Economy and Innovation in Quebec. So, Dr. Quirion, without any further ado, I'll let you share your presentation. Thank you.
System related to AI, related to the digital future of digital economy, quite a bit of activity in Canada, and certainly the hotspot in Montreal. So the university, college, SMEs, large company, GAFA, they are all there. So very, very rich network in Montreal. Also activity in maybe François Laviolette will talk about that in Quebec City, and more in various cities in the province. So certainly a lot of commitment, the various level of government in terms of artificial intelligence and the digital economy. Next slide. Sorry if you're not on this on the picture for those of you from Quebec, but some of the stars that many of you will know in the field of AI in Canada, especially in Montreal: Oshua Benjo, Joel Pino at McGill University and Facebook, Donia Prekop at DeepMind, and Hugo Larochelle at Google. And there's many others. Just a few names. So there is quite a bit of capacity, leadership, cutting-edge scientists, and of course, around these guys, men and women, a lot of a network of professors, of scientists, of investors, and so on. Next slide. So we're building very much around these guys. We have a strategy, the Quebec Artificial Intelligence Strategy, 5 directions: ensure the development and sustainability of Quebec as an AI academic research hub, and continue invest long-term, very critical. Develop digital science talent to meet needs. And it's not just in Quebec, we have to recruit from outside. Accelerate the development and adoption of AI solutions. Still challenging, but critically important. Strategic direction 4, international network, very critical. That's what we're working on today with you. And 5, development of ecosystem support structure. So a lot of infrastructure, and we are now building what we call in Quebec, innovation zone, and certainly some of them will focus on the digital. And we have a working group, and François is on, maybe I did not show that, but we have a working group now that include the private sector, government, academia, to basically everything related to access to data, use of AI in the healthcare system, and it's a priority for us. So in summary, AI and health, priority, as I said, for the minister, the woman, digital health by fall 2022. And still the same target in spite of the pandemic. And as the minister told me 2 weeks ago, it's because of the pandemic. We have seen a lot of challenge in our healthcare system, and artificial intelligence, digital health related approach could help a lot. Commitment made by government at various levels to resolve this challenge. But of course, there we cannot work in isolation. We have to work with you. We have to work with partnership locally but as importantly, internationally, an opportunity with California. So it certainly are great. And key for me, again, partnership and people. Yes, we talk about artificial intelligence, but key is the human intelligence. So training enough people, recruiting enough people in the field, certainly very, very critical. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And hopefully you'll have a great discussion this afternoon.
Thank you, Atim. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present. So at Perceive, we are a Montreal-based precision medicine company. We model patient and their disease to create unique and specific signatures to forecast how these patients will evolve in time in response to treatment. So essentially, we do patient selection in clinical trials. And currently, we are developing solutions in neurological and cardiovascular disease. So patients are very diverse, and their disease trajectory and treatment response are very heterogeneous as well. And currently, we are lacking tools to forecast how these patients will evolve in time, and especially in the near future, so that we can do more appropriate selection of those individuals in clinical trials, as well as patient management. So in the clinical trial context, the inclusion-exclusion criteria that are mainly based on diagnostic end up lacking information on how these patients will evolve in time, therefore leading to poor patient selection. That has a lot of downstream effect, among which the fact that you will have high failure rate, massive costs, long trial duration, as well as low treatment efficacy, as Sarah pointed out. So Perceive is really harnessing patient heterogeneity to reduce clinical trial risk as well as endpoint failure. And we are doing that using AI-driven digital biomarkers. So we've devised a platform to create those digital biomarkers, a discovery platform that encompass multiple modalities, among which imaging, genetic, molecular data, to really have a full view or holistic view of the patient to be able to do that prognostic evaluation.
You can see my screen okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I will just jump right into this quickly by way of background on us. We are a machine learning team out of the Montreal Institute for Learning Algorithms, focused very specifically on this domain of drug design. Started the company about 2.5 years ago to expand on research that we had done as a founding team during grad school. Really focused on developing new machine learning methods to better predict molecular properties, design new small molecule drug candidates, optimize these molecules for various properties. We work with a number of pharma, biotech, and academic partners really to support their drug discovery programs from start to finish. And we are now a team of about 15 people covering the spectrum from experimentalists through to computationalists, with a lot of folks cross-trained in computation, biology, and chemistry in between. And we're very fortunate to be headquartered at Mila and also have some wonderful advisors, including Yashua Bengio and Francois, who gave a very nice talk earlier this afternoon. So just very quickly, by way of background, Sarah touched on some of this in her presentation, but a viable drug candidate has to satisfy a whole bunch of properties simultaneously. This is an oversimplification, but in many ways, designing a drug is similar to solving a Rubik's Cube. It has to satisfy efficacy parameters, it has to be selective, it has to be safe and non-toxic. And in the same way that solving for one face of the Rubik's Cube often comes at the expense of another, solving for one of these parameters in drug discovery can often come at the expense of something that you've previously tried to optimize for. And solving all of these different constraints simultaneously is a very challenging problem that we're working to address. And what we can do with machine learning is turn this into an optimization problem in which we're trying to solve for all of these different parameters simultaneously. These types of optimization problems are something that machine learning technologies are quite good at. So for example, we may have a starting molecule that looks good on one of these dimensions. And what we want to do is very rapidly and very cost effectively iterate towards an optimized molecule that satisfies all of these different criteria simultaneously. And in order to do this well, you need to have a very large number of tools in your machine learning toolkit. So fortunately, we've been working on these problems for a while. A lot of the work that we're doing today builds on work that was actually done in Francois' lab. with some of my other co-founders. But essentially, in working on this big drug design project with Pfizer and Merck, a lot of the shortcomings that exist in this space of machine learning applied to drug design became apparent, particularly as it pertains to things like data limitations in drug discovery that you may not have to deal with in other domains.
It's a really good question. So the way that we've kind of thought about healthcare is you've got this kind of stack where the systems of record, which are kind of your traditional EHRs, practice management systems, and some of the kind of early incumbents that are the physicians are engaging with, they're entering a lot of this information and data. The market has consolidated quite a bit, so you do have a number of large players. And historically, getting data out of those systems has been really difficult because it wasn't really, there wasn't a big incentive for those vendors to play well with others because they want to, kind of maintain control over the data. And in many cases as well, there wasn't a big incentive necessarily for providers to share data with each other, right? Outside of maybe benefiting the patient, which is obviously really important. But there was concerns from providers as well about, if I share data, is there going to be any like compliance issues or legal or regulatory issues? So I think historically it's been challenging. In the States, the government's passed a number of regulations around data blocking and preventing data blocking. So getting access to information has become a little bit easier, I would say, and there's mechanisms and interoperability language like FHIR that we're using to extract data from these systems. So I think that's where a lot of the kind of new investment is coming in, is around these kind of systems of intelligence and engagement that are really focused on the patient and the patient outcome, and leveraging potentially the information from those kind of long-standing systems of record to pull information out and to transform that information to provide opportunities to engage the patient at the appropriate points of care. That's really where we're seeing a lot of opportunity. So with the company that we founded, Glide Health, we're essentially using machine learning primarily to optimize the kind of revenue cycle for a provider office, which has traditionally been a very difficult and challenging process because of some of the way that the insurance companies or the payers within the United States tend to deny claims and to deny payment to these providers because of very strict rules around how those claims are processed. So we're using information, the claim, which is the outbound 837 EDI format, and the remittance, which is the 835 format. And we're analyzing that data, and we're essentially identifying rules that we can embed within kind of a claim analysis solution before the provider sends it out, makes recommendations, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for, kind of new companies to come out and to, leverage the information that's available. And we talked about some of the challenges around structured versus unstructured, and that's on the clinical side, that's always going to be, something that you have to contend with. But at the end of the day, like, I think, we always tried to focus on the patient and ultimately what is going to be a good solution for the patient. And I think historically healthcare hasn't really focused on the patient as much. There's been a lot of focus on optimizing efficiencies for healthcare providers and potentially payers, insurance companies. But I think more and more companies are starting to focus on the patient. How can we provide information to the patient at the relevant time? How can we pull information from the patient so that the provider has access to that information to support their treatment? So I think that's kind of where we've been focused. That's where I think a lot of investment dollars are going in the United States. You could specifically look at companies like Livongo and Omada Health and some of these other groups that are essentially providing a lot of care management. But yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing here.
How and why there is so many reasons so clinical trials fails in phase 2 and 3. Some people want to have your opinion on it. And second question for you, Sarah, how the wearable technology will play a role in patients' stratification and selections in clinical trials. And I think maybe those two questions are related.
Yeah, sure. That's a very interesting question. So the reason of failure of phase 2 and 3, so phase 1 and 2, you have a lot of toxicity issues. And phase 2 and 3, you have a lot of efficacy issues. So the lack of efficacy of a drug can come from the molecule itself, but also from the target that has been identified for the molecule. And particularly when you are targeting what we'll call heterogeneous diseases. So disease that will have like the same clinical manifestation, that will be diagnosed the same way, but with patients that have really different pathological mechanisms that do not appear necessarily. So this heterogeneity could be addressed as explained very nicely by Christian, actually at the patient selection, if you can really capture these differences between patients so that you select the right patient for the clinical trial. But a lot of the efficacy is also really could be addressed only at the very beginning of the drug discovery process. When you have something, when you try to understand a pathological mechanism of a disease and you just have a very confused idea because you're like leveraging, averaging everything, the process, because you have this general idea of the disease, then of course you cannot identify very precise target. And by identifying more precise target, understanding really the pathological mechanism per subgroup of patients, bringing this stratification of patient really early into the drug discovery process, then there is a great chance that you increase significantly the drug efficacy. And this is something that, of course, is like just starting in pharma. To tell you the truth, there were so many issues and there are so many challenges to be able to do that we explained here. So the accessibility of multi-omic data that will be able to capture all this complexity of the disease is a huge challenge, because as François says, data sets are dispersed, and you never have like a big enough cohort so that you can really do this work. So this actually motivated what we call like the distributed computing and federated learning. So the ability to do learning on data located at different locations without moving the data. And while this was like a tour de force in like 2 years ago, it's like becoming a need to have when you have a platform right now and you want to do this kind of thing. So this is so you need to get these data. You need after to resolve the fat data problem. You have this huge amount of data. You have too many features. Even like when you aggregate everything, you will still have too many features with respect to the number of samples, and this for many, many years. So you really have to do this smart reduction of dimensionality of data that will not induce a loss of 99% of the information. So this is a lot of scientific challenges, a lot of engineering challenges. To go into the IoT, of course, real world evidence and any more information about like the phenotypical data, so the phenomic, what we'll call the phenomic, and the lifestyle, so information on the environment and the interaction of the multicellular organism that we are and our environment is extremely important to really assess how we react to a drug and to a treatment. So these are information that needs to be integrated at different stages of the drug development very early, as I explained, but also before clinical trial for patient selection and during clinical trial, so that you can, at the end of the day, develop companion tests that will know the personalization of treatment. But there is a lot of, a huge improvement that have been done over very, very few years in this direction. And there is a lot of hope to really have, at last, integration of personalized medicine, the personalized medicine that we hear about for the past 15 years, 20 years. I don't know. I think I was still doing my PhD. We were talking about already of personalized medicine, and it's quite a long time ago. So yeah, I don't know if it answers the question, but there is a lot of challenges to be resolved. The good news is that these challenges need to be resolved. And just if I may add about like the problem of accessing the data. And I know that this is probably, there is a lot of fears about sharing data and having the data being used, the medical data being used. And sometimes there is a misconception about the fact that the data are in danger by being used. There is a lot of technology that is developed that make the data safe. Seriously, all this technology about distributed computing and federated learning, they are the best protection ever on the data. And I think there will be a lot of gain to have these data used. To be able to personalize existing treatment or to develop new treatment. And you don't have to take this decision at the expense of privacy, because the regulation are there, the technology is there. And I think we can trust that the things could be done correctly. Now we need to be sure that the things are done correctly, but they could be done correctly because technologically this is feasible.
Yeah, but I just maybe continue what Sarah is saying, because I think we effectively have new technology that help us to properly deal with this sensitive kind of data. I think the main problem now is simply that the citizen is not involved in the reflection. Yeah. And so that's why this big brother ideas is always popping up and things like that, because we have to take time to explain to people why it's so important for example, for health science to have access to their data, and how we can do it properly in order that this trade-off between the fact that the zero risk is not existing. So if we give access to people, to researcher, for example, of sensitive data, there might be something bad that comes out of that, because but we also have to think about the fact that, but in counterpart, if we do not give this access, here what we are missing. And so this is the first thing that I think Sarah pointed out, and we have to go into this direction. The other point is it's to also involve the researchers in the domain, in this new paradigm that we have, because we have an approach with AI that is what is called bottom up. We start from the data, look for correlation, and infer some predictor that might be good. This is exactly the contrary of the usual scientific way of doing things, where you make some hypothesis and then you design an experiment in order to validate it by the end. And so, for example, when you have phase 2, phase 3 process that we are doing now, we are doing it in the point of view of the classical paradigm. We suppose that here is we have this drug that should be good to help for this kind of disease for the population in general. And then what we see is basically that, well, it's not beating the placebo. This is something that has happened very often. And what we are trying to do now with this personal medicine is saying that maybe it's not good for the population in general, but if we look at the people which have this particular mutation on this particular gene, then it's really worthy. And this is where the data is so important. So it's not possible to have this information if we cannot put this new kind of data into the big soup of our analysis. but also we cannot. We have to take care about if we want to do it properly from the point of view of this of the scientific procedure. We cannot suppose that if we have done phase 2, phase 3, in order of not thinking about this part of the population that has a mutation, we cannot reuse this experiment. We have to redone it from the beginning and so on. So we have to think about being maybe taking more time to design phase 2, phase 3, how it is going to be, in order to not to have a yes or no answer, but possibly a yes or no answer, but giving some subset of the population. The one example is me, basically. I have a cancer, a prostate cancer, and I have now I'm in a special my medication is very design and personal design. It's based on the fact that they take my cells, my metastasis cells. They take the genome of it. They take the genome of my good cells, and they see that there are some mutation for my metastasis cells on a particular gene that is called BRCA2. But I don't have this mutation on my cells that are healthy. And so then there's a special medication that has been designed that is just attacking this weakness of my metastasis cells, right? And I am most of the people that has my cancer do not have exactly this kind of situation. And if there is no one that was thinking about looking about how the genome of our cell of people are interacting with the disease and things like that, this kind of discovery will not be possible.
Thank you, Francois. Sorry to interrupt you. We appreciate your intervention. I was actually going to get to you when Sarah finished, because I think you had that piece of the ethics. So thank you for your perspective. We're over our time, unfortunately. This is an amazing conversation. As you can see from Francois, we could keep going for hours on end, but we're mindful of everyone's time. Guy, would you like to say a few words to end the webinar? Guy, who's our delegate for Quebec in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, thank you, Etzim. I'll be very brief. First of all, I want to thank you and Marie-Pierre as well for driving this webinar today. A special thanks to Dan Lauder for taking the time to be with us. It's well appreciated, as well as the Canadian Entrepreneur in Life Sciences for helping us in promoting our webinars in Silicon Valley. Our office is based in the beautiful city of San Francisco. So if you're a researcher, if you're an entrepreneur, or even a founder, don't hesitate to call us. We're actually linked with the whole Quebec ecosystem of R&D as well as financial ecosystem. We're always open for business. So that's the message that I wanted to give to everyone today. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us, and I hope to see everyone next time on our next webinar. Thank you, Etzim.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Marie-Pierre. And thank you again to TransmedTech also for, and the Ministry of Economy and Innovation for supporting these events.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.